Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back for another Soul Sunday. Grab your coffee, grab your tea, and let's get into it. So, this week we are still with the 4 agreements. We are nearing the end of the book. There's 2 more chapters after this one. So, this chapter is the 3rd agreement, and it's don't make assumptions. Now, obviously, again, we're humans. Everybody makes assumptions when we don't have a clear conclusion. And that comes because we don't communicate properly. So this week, I'm going to read a few passages. Usually I read a few excerpts, but I feel like it's super relevant. So I'm going to get into it. All right, so we're on page 64. So take a moment to consider the truth of this statement. The whole war of control between humans is about making assumptions and taking things personally. We create a lot of emotional poison just by making assumptions and taking it personally, because usually we start gossiping about our assumptions. Remember, gossiping is the way we communicate to each other in the dream of hell and transfer poison to one another. Because we are afraid to ask for clarification, we make assumptions and believe we are right about the assumptions. Then we defend our assumptions and try to make someone else wrong. It's always better to ask questions than to make an assumption, because assumptions set us up for suffering. And how true is that? How many times, me personally, and I'm sure a lot of you have gone through the same thing, you assume because we're like, okay, like, I don't know what other conclusion to draw. I don't know if I want to talk to this person about this. So you just make up this whole thing in your head. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's not even the case. So the best thing that I've learned is to try to communicate and get down to it. But sometimes it's hard to communicate depending on the situation, which is understandable. The big mitote in the human mind creates a lot of chaos, which causes us to misinterpret everything and misunderstand everything. We only see what we want to see and hear what we want to hear. We don't perceive things the way they are. We have the habit of dreaming with no basis in reality. We literally dream things up in our imaginations. Because we don't understand something, we make up an assumption about the meaning. And when the truth comes out, the bubble of our dream pops and we find out it was not what we thought it was at all. Making assumptions in our relationships is really asking for problems. Often we make the assumption that our partners know what we think and that we don't have to say what we want. We assume they're going to do what we want because they know us so well. If they don't do what we assume they should do, we feel so hurt and say, you should have known. Again, how many times has that happened when, if you do something for someone and they don't return it in kind, then you're like, what the heck? You know what I'm saying? So communication is the only way to clarify and make sure that both people are on the same page, so that we're not making assumptions and making up all these things in our mind that a lot of times just aren't even the case. So there's a quote that's on page 64 that I wanted to bring up again, and I want to present you guys with an example to go a little bit deeper. So the quote is, the whole war of control between humans is about making assumptions and taking things personally. Now, I think a great example of this was back in 2020 when Black people were marching for injustices. Now, we know about the one major one, but the reason that we were marching and going so hard was because it was a culmination of a lot of injustices that have happened throughout the years. When we tried to do this, we were met with rubber bullets, we were met with mace, we were met with a lot of violence, you name it. And it was sad to see, because when Caucasians stormed the Capitol because of something they feel was unjust, they were not met with anywhere near the amount of resistance that we were when we were just trying to get justice. So assumptions are made that when Black people assemble, that we're dangerous. But when Caucasian people did that, it wasn't taken with the same gravity. So I implore all of you to really not make assumptions and to think about that. Think about why is this group of people doing this? Now, of course, on each side of the fence, there are extremists. And You know, extremity of any sort is not good. There should be balance, and I will openly say that. But truly, I implore you to not make assumptions about people before you really know what their true purpose is. Another assumption which is going around, which is crazy right now, is the Asian hate. You know, we know that Corona started in China, but that does not mean that every Asian person you see is responsible for Corona. It's just ridiculous. So it's not fair to make that assumption. It's not fair to hurt people based on that crazy assumption. So truly, we really have to stop making these assumptions and see each person for who they are and see each situation for what it is. And if we don't understand, communicate so that we can. So, with that, the third agreement, y'all, do not make assumptions. Try your best to communicate. If you can't, just don't draw a conclusion when you don't really know. That's what it is. All right? So I will catch y'all next week. Bye.